Hi everyone, I'm Natalia Vradi. I'm head of operations of the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum for Southeast Europe, or as you will hear me say it, YCDF. And I have the great pleasure to be moderating today's panel. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in to join us today for this discussion and express our gratitude to the organizers and the founder of the International Youth Conference, Ali Mustafa, for creating this space for us to discuss about youth and the environment in Southeast Europe. And I also want to make a special shout out to Jessica Lee for handling all the behind the scenes tech magic to make this online panel possible. So before we dive in, I have to say it's kind of amazing how this panel is made up entirely of women. Because while we often tend to see that women are on the front lines of climate activism, according to We Do, men still make 70% of negotiators and decision makers when it comes to formal climate diplomacy and more specifically, conference of the parties. So while we're changing the game here, there's still a long way to go. It's a real pleasure here to have with me speakers who belong to the YCDF family. So just to give you the context, the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum is a youth-led initiative under the auspices of the UNESCO Chair on Climate Diplomacy. It operates with local councils across the 13 economies of Southeast Europe. We currently have 10 functioning local councils and 3 in the making. Our mission is to bring young people to the forefront of climate diplomacy, not just as observers, but as real decision makers, because we believe that youth deserve not just a voice, but an actual seat at the table. So I have here with me today Başak Almaz, who is the co-chair of Turkey's local council and a research assistant at the University of, if I'm not mistaken, Aydin University of Istanbul. Yes. Alina Alexandru, who is a political reporter and chair of Romania's local council. Kristina Mraz, who is a co-chair of Serbia's local council and an environmental engineer. And last but not least, Rania Papadopoulou, who is a human rights expert and the chair of the entire initiative of the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And I'm going to kick things off with our first question. So, Başak, I'm going to start with you. I think we can both agree that climate anxiety is real, but so is the drive among young people to take action. But I feel like often the energy doesn't match the opportunities. So, in your country's context, what are the main barriers preventing youth from becoming more actively involved in environmental protection? And how can we collaboratively address this across Southeast Europe?
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for joining our panel. As the representative of Turkey, I'd like to focus on 2 key barriers that prevent young people from engaging more actively in environmental action. And the first one is environmental education in Turkey is still poorly incorporated into our academic curriculum. 2 years ago, the Ministry of Education introduced a 2-hour per week elective course in secondary schools. And last year, a situation report was prepared by independent NGOs. And the research showed that teachers criticized the course's material shortage, too much teacher labor to meet the objectives, the absence of content for vulnerable groups, and finally, the lack of family and society reflection. A teacher stated that the course had no teacher's book. A single book was created for all secondary students from 6th to 8th grades. And the second one is the economic pressures the youth face in Turkey. In a society with high unemployment rate, many young people choose job security over activism. Environmental engagement is typically considered a luxury, unfortunately, rather than a career. University examinations, student loan issues, and unemployment anxiety dominate youth concerns here. And official data from 3 years ago actually showed that 5.5 million students owed 6.1 billion Turkish liras in student loans in graduate levels. And according to another governmental data from last year, men aged between 15 to 24 had 14.1% unemployment rates, and women 21.1%. I know it's not too bad, but it's not good enough. To address these barriers actually across Southeast Europe, I believe we need two interconnected strategies. First, we can establish a regional climate education network, maybe a regional youth climate academy, to offer open access, multilingual online courses, joint workshops, and high quality climate literacy materials. This might also, I believe, lead to a regional drive for environmental education at all levels of schooling, possibly through some legislative recommendations or curriculum toolkits. And second, I believe we can connect climate activism with green job opportunities, and I believe it's critical because many young people can't afford unpaid activism, regionally speaking, of course. European Union or regional development funds can help young people create eco-friendly projects and or initiatives. And by tying climate action to employment, we can empower youth, perceive environmental work as a financial opportunity, and make it meaningful. And I also like to share two successful examples of youth-led initiatives in Turkey, but shall we go on later or?
Yes, that's the second question.
Okay.
So,
Okay, that's our second question. So,
but thank you for your insights and very interesting data about the lack of education in Turkey regarding climate action and the climate crisis in general. So let's move with Romania and Alina. Can
Yes.
you share some of the barriers that young people face in your country?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say hi to everyone that's watching us. And in Romania, I would identify two main barriers. Limited, first of all, limited environmental education, surprisingly or not, the same as Turkey, and the lack of awareness. Environmental topics are barely covered in formal education. Most of young people grow up without a solid understanding of environmental issues, their causes, or their solutions. This lack of knowledge translates into low motivation and a sense of helplessness. Despite that, surveys show that young Romanians are concerned by climate issues. For example, there is a strong desire for knowledge. A EU-Report survey found that 75% of Romanian youth wish to learn more about the causes, effects, and solutions to climate change. According to UNICEF, 88% of Romanian children and teenagers believe that climate change affects their life, with 63% stating that it impacts their lifestyle significantly. And finally, there is also that sense of helplessness I was telling you about, which another EU-Report survey highlighted that nearly 60% of Romanian children do not understand how they can contribute to combating climate change, leading to feelings of helplessness and even climate anxiety. As a regional approach, Southeast Europe faces similar problems when we talk about the climate change and the youth-led activism, and also our cultural aspects are similar. So this is our starting point. We already identified similarities during our first annual conference of YCDF, and now we need action. That starts by building cross-border educational campaigns, I would say, integrating environmental education into curricula across Southeast Europe, and creating youth exchange programs to share knowledge and practices. In Europe, we already have the opportunity to access exchange programs with Western countries usually. But I think it might come in more handy to focus on doing that with economies from our region, especially due to the similarities to the similar context. It is very important to foster regional dialogue, so for finding the best solutions for us. That's it from me. Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you, Alina. I think we've already seen some common challenges that Romania and Turkey are facing. But what about Serbia? What about you, Kristina? What have you identified?
Yeah. Hi, guys. It's really a pleasure to be a part of this panel. And I found this informations from Turkey and from Romania very interesting. I see some similarities. So I'm happy to share with you some insights from Serbia. The youth does care about the environment, but other priorities dominate. According to the youth, the top problems of the environmental protection are low environmental awareness of the general public and pollution of air, water, and soil. However, their priority list looks different. First, there comes personal development, employment, health, entrepreneurship, safety, and then environmental issues. So the youth is focused on securing their basic needs and a stable future. And similar to Turkey, environmental activism often feels like a luxury problem. So to act on their priority list, unfortunately, a lot of young Serbians are leaving Serbia. Over 50,000 young Serbians emigrate each year. And this comes also from a lack of institutional trust. The Regional Youth Cooperation Office has found that only 27% of the youth in the Western Balkans trust their government. Therefore, they're not really motivated to engage in governmental funded projects. And only 11% feel heard by their decision makers. This also comes from a lack of a diverse youth representation, because in Serbia, only 4% of the Serbian parliament members are under 30 years old. And they're all from the ruling party. So they do not reflect the full political and social diversity of Serbia's young population. However, there are great and successful initiatives, but they're mostly focused in the central hubs of the countries. In rural areas, the infrastructure and the support is basically non-existent. And there's also, unfortunately, a false perception that environmentalism is only for the rich and educated. And this is a problem which really alienates the youth from working classes and rural backgrounds. And as we know, these are the ones who are mostly affected by climate change and environmental pollution. So we can see the issue here is that the youth feels underrepresented and unsupported. And what can we do to empower them? So I fully agree that environmental education must be promoted. And I was thinking there of my personal experience, because I had the opportunity to go to a winter school to India. And now, instead of being an environmental researcher only standing in the lab, I'm participating in panels like this, and I'm sharing my knowledge. And I feel more encouraged to fight for my home country and the environment. So I think international, transnational summer schools and winter schools can be a great thing that can bring young people together. And also, I agree, promoting green jobs, for example, through networking, is very important. And we can show that working on environmental problems can be profitable, and it can also help with the priority list. For example, personal development in terms of career advancing, and then also financial security, and still doing a part to protect our environment altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristina. So, Rania, I think the main problems that the girls have mentioned already are lack of education, the fact that you feel like civic engagement is a luxury, especially regarding climate crisis. But I think the solution is common, that we need cross-border collaboration between the Southeast European economies. What are the barriers that you have identified in Greece, in your experience?
So, first, I want to say that it's truly an honor to speak with you today, not just as the chair of the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum, but as someone who deeply believes that young people like us are the key to fighting climate change in Southeast Europe. Our region is one of the most vulnerable in the world. The effects of climate change are everywhere. Floods, wildfires, and unbearable heat waves that are turning our hometowns into ovens. And it's only getting worse. So we see that the consequences of climate change are similar for all the region, and the barriers are similar for all the region. We have also seen, though, that something powerful is happening. In Greece and around the world, young people are standing up. We've raised our voices, we've marched, we've said loud and clear, we want climate action now. Before the pandemic, the Fridays for Future movement showed the world that youth can do what they can do when we have support from teachers, local leaders, and the media. That wave of action sent a message. But now we need the next step, and here come the barriers. Because we want to do more, but too often we are not given the chance. Why is that? As the previous speakers have also already mentioned, we don't always get the education we need. Many schools still don't teach how climate change connects to the problems we face every day in Greece. We don't have climate or environmental lessons in our daily curricula. So we don't know how pollution, floods, wildfires, or flood shortages are connected to climate change. And without this understanding, action is too hard to take place. And even worse, we face a wave of fake news and conspiracy theories. Social media is the main way many young people get information, and it's full of misinformation. When fake news makes it all the way to politicians and decision makers, our work becomes even harder. It confuses people and blocks real change. And we have seen this a lot, not only in our region recently, but worldwide. Second, we are often left out of decision making. How many youth politicians do you see in our region? Kristina before mentioned a decent percent, let me say, of young politicians in Serbia. In Greece, we have less than 5. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they are 2 in the Greek parliament. Why, or except of the young politicians, do we see any interconnection between youth policies and climate policies? No. Why is this happening? Either because the politicians of the region undermine the severity of climate change, or because they don't think we are ready yet. We are invited to invent, sure, but when it's time to make real choices, we are told to wait. But we are told that we are the leaders of tomorrow, but climate change is happening right now, today. We don't just want to be included, we must be allowed to lead right now as well. And third, let's not forget the economic reality that the ladies mentioned before. Many young people in Southeast Europe struggle to find jobs or feel they have to leave their countries for better opportunities. The brain drain is real. It's a big threat for the youth population of the region. And when you're worried about rent or food, it's hard to focus on saving forests and oceans. But let me be clear, these challenges are big, but they are not impossible. We can overcome them. How? We can overcome them together. First, if we are not given a real seat at the table, we need to demand one, to take our seat at the table. Let's push for the implementation of youth policies. Let's have youth climate councils in every country so young people can help shape the laws and policies that affect our future. We don't want symbolic roles, we want a voice that matters. Second, let's build stronger bridges across borders, like the one we have established in the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum. I've seen amazing youth movements in Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, Slovenia, and beyond, in a region with a complex history, with such complex history as ours. This unity is powerful, not just for the planet, but as a message of peace. When we work together, we are stronger. And third, let's fight for better climate education for everyone. Climate literacy should be taught in every school, in every city, in every rural village. This is how we defeat misinformation and help people truly care. And finally, let's make this movement inclusive. Yes, climate change affects young people deeply and mostly, but we are not the only ones. We need everyone on board. The experience of older generations, combined with our energy and new ideas, makes us unstoppable. We don't need to wait until we are older, richer, or more experienced to promote climate diplomacy and tackle climate change. We are ready, we are powerful, and we are enough right now. Let's rise together and show the world that Southeast Europe's youth are not just watching the future, we are building it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rania. So to wrap up the first round of questions, I think we've identified the lack of education, lack of awareness, lack of institutional trust, brain drain, and economic insecurity as the main barriers for youth in Southeast Europe. And as Rania mentioned, we don't want to be the leaders of tomorrow, but we want to be the leaders of today. So I think I will flip the lens a little bit now, since you've already hinted that there are some powerful and successful examples of youth-led environmental action that are making real and tangible change. Could you perhaps provide some examples from your economies? Let's start with Başak.
Thank you, Natalia. I believe a little bit focus on the successful examples is also important to create some sense of hope, because hopefulness, I believe, is the drive that we need to act now. So I want to share two successful examples of youth-led initiatives from Turkey. And the first one is e-cording. It's a youth-founded social enterprise that plants seed balls with eco-drones in the deforested areas. E-cording creates green job opportunities by incorporating youth in fieldwork, drone technology, software, communication, and logistics. And I believe it shows how environmental action can be linked to professional growth and economic sustainability. And another one is, as Rania mentioned before, Fridays for Future Turkey. And they have rallied high school and college students in major cities. And despite minimal institutional support, they have launched climate strikes, awareness campaigns, and online actions, often developing their own institutional materials and digital contents. So both initiatives actually show that youth environmental action may be scalable and regionally relevant with financing, recognition, or policy space. So such models, I believe, may foster local innovation and climate resilience in Southeast Europe. I know these are not quick fixes, but they're essential steps towards empowering young people across our region to act with both knowledge and confidence, and ultimately collaboration across our region can turn our shared struggles into shared solutions and help young people see environmental protection and environmental action not as a burden, but as a feature worth investing in. That's all I can say. Thank you so much.
Very impressive examples and a strong message by Başak. Thank you so much. Let's move with Alina and successful examples in Romania of youth environmental action.
Sure. The first one and a very powerful example of a youth-led environmental initiative in Romania is the last year's first National Youth Declaration on Climate Change, launched on October 2024 at the Victoria Palace, which is the government's building, during the local conference of youth known as the Local Conference of Youth Romania 2024. This initiative was organized by the Youth Platform for Sustainability and the Romanian Youth Council with the support of the Prime Minister's Office and UNICEF Romania. So the declaration represents a collective statement from Romanian young people calling for stronger climate action and meaningful youth involvement in policy making. It puts forward concrete solutions such as introducing climate education in schools, protecting biodiversity with stricter measures, increasing investment in renewable energy, green innovation, and the circular economy, and establishing as well a youth advisory council on climate change to ensure collaboration between young people and government in the development of environmental policies. This declaration not only reflects the concerns of Romania youth, but it also fits into the global youth statement that was presented at the last year's COP29 in Baku. What made this initiative so impactful was its ability to combine the youth-led advocacy with the institutional support, securing visibility at the highest level of the government. And of course, another important example that everyone knows is the Fridays for Future movement, which also happened in Romania, a youth movement that has organized climate strikes and public demonstrations in major cities such as the capital, Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca, and Timișoara. Their efforts have raised awareness about the climate crisis and, of course, mobilized young people to demand stronger environmental policies, showing the power of grassroots activism to influence public debate. And ultimately, the challenge across Southeast Europe is transforming youth activism from isolated events into sustained, institutionalized influence. This requires building alliances, not just across borders, but also across generations, I would say, with mentors, with policymakers and experts who can support this long-term change, not just the short-term one.
I think through the examples you provided, you showed how important it is to have institutional support. And I also want to say how impressive it is that the Fridays for Future movement expanded across Europe. So let's move with that with Kristina and Serbia.
Yes, in Serbia we also have Fridays for Future initiative, but I chose to talk about a few different less known initiatives, such as Zeleni Sad, which means Green Novi Sad. This is an informal group of young people, and they're focusing on urban gardening and community cleanups. And this is done in neglected city areas. They transform these corners, which are gray and ugly and littered, into green spaces. And this is how they gained community trust and visibility. Also, this approach has a high potential of replication, and it can be adapted to any city. Then there are the young researchers of Serbia, and they're one of the most established youth environmental organizations, and they've been active since the 70s. They organize volunteer educational camps, tree planting, and youth science initiatives. They engage thousands of young people through hands-on action, and they have very strong partnerships. They work with municipalities, schools, but also EU programs, and they invite smaller initiatives to apply to EU grants for funding. So they are a great partner for smaller and more independent initiatives. Then there is a newer initiative, which is Youth for Air, and they are tackling air pollution in Serbia by educating the citizens and raising public awareness. This is done by them using real data from air quality sensors and communicating them through social media and through other internet sources. And they also contribute to policy discussions on clean air. So the factors that make these initiatives successful and impactful is tangible and visible results, strong partnerships, and the use of real data so that people can feel more engaged and more empathic for environmental problems.
Did you say that the Young Researchers Initiative has been operating since the 1970s?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. I think it shows you that climate change has been a problem since forever, and young leaders are trying to make their voices heard since, again, forever. Wow, very amazing. Rania, are we gonna close with you in Greece? Can you provide some successful examples from our economy?
Sure. So I will share with you a story of hope and action from my home country, Greece. In recent years, young people in Greece have shown that when we come together, we don't just raise awareness, we create real change. And a great example of this is what we're doing here, is the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum for Southeast Europe, which started as a Greek initiative back in COP28. Actually, it started a few days before. It started as a few words written on a paper in a notebook. And now it's growing into something much bigger, a regional platform for action. It was created by the UNESCO Chair on Climate Diplomacy Forum of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, because back then we believed, and we still believe, of course, that youth should not only protest and in the streets and be there, we should sit at the table where decisions are being made, as we explained before. And today, more and more young people across Southeast Europe are joining us to do that. What made this possible? First and foremost, support. And this is totally connected with the barriers for which we discussed before. I want to take a moment and thank Professor Emanuela Dousis, the chairholder of UNESCO Chair on Climate Diplomacy, who showed how to the world what it means to truly believe in youth. From the beginning, she didn't just encourage us, she gave us space, tools, and guidance. She trusted us to lead. That trust is what makes all the difference. When youth are trusted, supported, and heard, we can do incredible things. We can do them even when we are not supported, trusted, and heard. But when we are all this, we can do even better things. So through the forum, we have organized youth dialogues, climate diplomacy workshops, and cross-border collaborations. We've brought together young people from Greece, the Balkans, and beyond to talk about climate, peace, and regional cooperation, not just in theory, but in action. So what made it work? What made it grow? First, real partnerships. Youth-led initiatives need adult allies, not to speak for us, but to stand with us. The UNESCO Chair gave our ideas credibility and a home base. That kind of institutional support can turn small actions into national and even regional movements. Second, a clear goal. We didn't just want to raise awareness. We wanted to bring youth into diplomacy, policy, and climate action at a deeper level. That clear mission helped us attract others who believed in the same vision. Regional mindset. From the start, we knew that climate doesn't stop at the borders. That's why we opened our doors to youth across Southeast Europe. And guess what? They showed up. When we work together as a region, our impact multiplies. Right now, as Natalia mentioned before, we have established 10 local councils in Albania, Bosnia, Greece, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Romania, Serbia, Slovenia, and Turkey. And last but not least, we need trust in youth. Perhaps this is the most important factor of all. As I explained before, adults must stop seeing young people as a future investment. We are here now. with knowledge, ideas, and solutions. What we need is the chance to use them. So, to anyone wondering whether youth can lead serious environmental initiatives, look at us. Look at the Youth Climate Diplomacy Forum. Look at the support we've received and the regional impact we are starting to build. And let this be a message to every government, university, and organization in Southeast Europe. If you support youth and believe in our potential, we will rise and we will bring others with us. The future is not far away. The future is already here, and we are shaping it together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rania. So to wrap up today's panel, I want to thank you all for your inspiring set of examples, for sharing your experiences, your vision, your stories, and thank you to the organizers and everyone who joined us for this conversation today. We hope that this conversation is just the beginning and a spark for even greater change and more youth inclusion in policymaking, not only across Southeast Europe, but globally. So if you come from a Southeast European economy and you're interested in environment, whether you're an activist or a policymaker or a student or just someone who's deeply interested in the environment, see on screen to send and reach out to us, send us a message to be part of our initiative. Thank you. Thank you, girls.
Thank you.